Welcome back to the Business Exchange, the show where we dive into ideas, people, and innovation shaping business and redefining the future. I'm your host, Joseph. Today I'm joined with Andrew Legge, founder of Havelock Wool, a company redefining insulation with sustainability, high performance wool solutions sourced from the rolling hills of New Zealand. Andrew's passion for natural materials, biophilic design, and environmental conscious building practices challenges an industry notorious for waste. We'll talk about sustainability, real estate, challenges in building tech, and even how AI could shape the future of sustainability building products. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Hi, Joseph. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're quite welcome. All right. So, what led you to start Havelock Wool, and what problem did you see in the insulation industry that others were ignoring?
Well, I mean, to be honest, Joseph, it's a long answer, but we don't want to bore anybody out of the gate. So I will just say that I got into this based on a burning desire to do something interesting that was really New Zealand centric. It's my favorite place on the planet. I was actually living in Southeast Asia and spending quite a bit of time in New Zealand and just kind of noticing that there was a lot of great things happening there from products already in existence, product innovation, marketing, storytelling. Like they were really just doing an amazing job, but it's obviously a pretty isolated place. And so my interest in leaving the finance world was really to just get involved in the New Zealand trade somehow. I was fairly sector agnostic, but then in looking around and kind of searching for opportunity and talking to everybody that we knew in the space, um, my world sort of collided in that I like to build things, I like to do things properly if I'm going to do them at all, and then I'm a big believer in natural things versus synthetic ones. And so in learning that I had actually built a house in New Zealand that had wool insulation in it, um, I was quite taken aback.
Hmm.
And frankly, I was just like most people that we now talk to 5 to 10 times a day, which is nobody knows anything about insulation. Um, there's this gargantuan industry around this very important part of building that is arguably fueled by somewhat of a race to the bottom. Um, Products are low integrity. We're not putting a lot of thought and interest and value on this very important part of the wall cavity, right? Which is what we're building to
Right.
protect us from the elements. So our basic view is why not take one of the most capable fibers on the planet and put it in that protective layer, the envelope of the structure, versus a low integrity, cheap filler that's not really going to work, if ever, but
Right.
certainly not for long. And
Right.
so that was a very basic premise. It was being done. I didn't invent this idea. It's actually been done for hundreds, if not thousands of years. For me, it was just about taking my accent and my enthusiasm and trying to put this product into, if we were to shift quickly to the business school box checking exercises. Again, huge industry, fairly low grade products, and the assumption 12 years ago was that there was a whole bunch of demand out there um, that would allow us to achieve our goals, right? Which is we're not after
Right.
any kind of significant market share. We just want to sell a better product to the people that want to buy it.
Right.
And sadly, 12 years ago, when we thought everyone was ready, we learned the hard way that they were not. Um, and so we've evolved as a business. We've evolved our product mix. We've conformed to the industry in a lot of ways. That really gets down to speed of install. That's incredibly important.
Right.
But we're still able to offer this wildly dynamic, high-performing fiber now in a way that's easy to install, easy to get delivered based on some new news. And so we just have really never changed the goal. We've just kind of had to adjust as we've moved our way down the field to try to figure out how to deliver to people in a way that made it easy for them.
Excellent. Good. Good. So, why wool and why New Zealand as a sourcing partner?
Really good question. I mean, first and foremost, the Kiwis are probably the best in the world at scouring wool. There's an abundant supply. and it's a significant line item in their GDP, and so they focus fairly heavily on making sure that they're getting to this product, from the farm gate through the scour and on into a shipping container, so it can go anywhere that it needs or wants to go. And
Right.
the reason that's important, particularly in today's world, is we think a lot about sustainability, and we think a lot about carbon footprint. But when you're putting nearly 20,000 kg in a 20-foot container, you're kind of redefining efficiency in shipping logistics. That is literally max capacity. We use a special
Right.
trailer to pull our containers from the port in Oakland up the hill to where we are in Reno, Nevada. So that abundant supply, that consistent supply in wool, we think about something called vegetable matter, which is the leftover stuff in wool. If I'm sourcing wool that's scoured in the U.S., I'm going to have to live with kind of somewhere around 1% VM or vegetable matter left over in the wool. In New Zealand, it's 0.1% or less. So
Oh.
the delta's 10x, right? These sound like low percentages, but the delta's particularly significant for all sorts of reasons, not least when I put that stuff in my machines. I don't want leftover stuff from the fields
Yeah.
in the wool. And so New Zealand makes it easy, efficient, and that supply is indeed abundant. And then if you were to switch to US or Canada, and we've had conversations with the wool authorities in both countries, we're really big, we're really spread out, we've got sheep populations everywhere, and trying to move greasy wool, unclean wool, through our trucking systems, get it cleaned and then delivered to me. One, it's like incredibly less efficient than it is to throw it on a boat in New Zealand and send it over here.
Right.
But then ultimately, really where that nets out is cost. So
Yeah.
by being able to source wool in New Zealand, deliver it over here, manufacture it in the US, and then deliver it from my facility, helps me be cost competitive in a space where it is incredibly price driven and I'm already at the upper end.
Right. Right. Gotcha. That makes sense. So how does your belief in biophilic design shape the way you think about buildings and human health?
Well, I just think that there's so many conversations, studies, and reasons to get very comfortable, whatever your views are, with nature. Being in a natural surrounding is more comfortable. It's more relaxing. It depresses our senses in a positive way. Our conference room here is lined with our acoustic panels. And I always bring people into the lobby and we talk and it's loud and there's sound and noise and voices bouncing off of every hard surface. And then I'll very deliberately walk them into the conference room and it literally feels like the ceiling is coming down around you.
Nice.
It's a very comfortable, relaxed environment where you can just sit and talk and engage. And I think it leads to better conversation, better focus, more attention to whatever the task is. And then, if you take all of these things and then you start thinking about air quality, which is both obviously the air that we're breathing and reducing contaminants, but then also air exchange. Harvard University has given us plenty of studies to understand how cognitive function is improved with better indoor air quality. And so
Right.
when you take these things and put them together, and that biophilic, that natural piece of what we offer is part of all of this equation, we just find that it creates a more comfortable space. And
Nice.
that's something that we're not here to profess that. We're not here to try to convince people. That's what we sense, that's what we appreciate. And so for those people out there that feel similarly, and fortunately for us, there's a lot of them, we're just here to provide products and education and awareness, and then ideally, a reasonable price for a really high quality product. But
Great.
for us, most of what we do is educate, and try to help people make informed decisions. Um, there's a lot of confusion. Some of it is intentional, I believe. But either way, it's hard to know, even with all of, the information age and all this available stuff right at our fingertips. That cuts both ways, and a lot of it can be quite confusing. And so, we try to lead with science, data, case studies, real life experience, and then let people make their own.
Right. Perfect. Good. So how does wool insulation compare to traditional materials like fiberglass or spray foam in real world performance?
I mean, this is a really tough one because, it's going to be opinion based to some degree, although there's a lot of science behind it as well. So I think if you go, let's stay in the science base because nobody really cares about opinion, certainly not mine. But if you just think about looking at certain fibers under a microscope, if you look at a coarse wool fiber, it's got 5 follicles. It's very dynamic. And this is a fiber that has literally evolved in nature's R&D department over thousands of years. And that evolution has been designed to protect these animals from the elements. All of the elements, hot, cold, wet, dry, like everything needs to get done by this fiber. That's the only coat they have.
Yeah.
And so that, I think, is where you see that dynamic consistency of that coarse wool fiber. And then if you kind of work your way to the other end of the spectrum, you're going to, work your way into cotton, linen, in no particular order, synthetics, and then of course fiberglass would fall into that synthetic fiber. But you could put like capilene if we want to think about stuff that we wear. This is where a lot of times you can make the intellectual connection for people. But
Right.
these fibers are like hollow pieces of spaghetti on their best day. So you're in Toronto, you guys know about wool where you are. You have cold seasons, you have hot seasons too. Wool performs both ways.
Right.
But the reality is, like, if you're out in the backcountry doing anything and you're wearing a synthetic base layer, it's going to work. It's just not going to work as well as a wool one.
Right.
You're obviously not going to wear a fiberglass base layer. You're not going to wear a newspaper base layer. And so that's where I think in a lot of the creations of these fibers, it's been a building industry kind of saying, let's get as cheap as we can because this stuff's in a wall cavity and nobody cares about it. And
Yeah.
historically, we've been comfortable with that. If it's cold, we just turn the heat up. But now we live in a world of 8 billion people, and energy is a problem, becoming a bigger one every day. And so we're starting to think about the efficiency of how we live and notably how we build. And so that changes construction practices, and so we look at building airtight now. When we build airtight now, we've got a cavity that's going to perform differently.
Right.
We're going to get vapor drive and condensation into that wall cavity. And now we need a material in there that's capable of adjusting to these new scenarios.
Right.
I think conventional wisdom supports the use of spray foam. We do not. And I think if you talk to most building scientists, they won't either. I think the concept and the idea of it working perfectly in a controlled environment may have its merits, but that's not how it works. That's not how it functions, particularly in new construction where it's often used. What happens 6 months later? The house settles. Well, when it settles, you get cracks. You get cracks in the wood. You think if you get cracks in the wood, you can get cracks in your insulation? You certainly can. And that's why, your bank manager in the UK is no longer going to allow you to take a loan from them if you're trying to buy a house that has spray foam in the lid. Right? So, this isn't my opinion. This is what's going on. This is people trying new things. Fiberglass isn't going to go away because for a lot of people, they're not going to ever care about insulation. And that's our cheap alternative that the building code will allow us to use. I don't think it does much over time. Again, back to those fiber dynamics and what you see under a microscope. So I'm sorry for a long, boring answer, but that's kind of why we do what we do. That's why wool is capable of doing what it does versus some of these alternatives.
Right. That makes sense. Good. So what misconceptions do builders or homeowners commonly have about natural insulation?
Oh, I think that um, it might be beyond a misconception because, again, I think a lot of times, builders and architects are educated, smart people, and a lot of them, the builders are fairly adventurous folks, and so, they're probably out wearing wool, if not on the weekends, maybe on the job site at certain times. Architects tend to be fairly educated people that understand that natural materials have a history of performing. The challenge is they both have a playbook and they don't like to change it. So a builder that's been building a certain way for however many of years, insert number here, they have liability with building, and particularly in the U.S., it's a very litigious place, right?
Yeah.
If you've done something time and time again and it keeps your liability limited, you're not really going to be running around trying to change that.
Yeah.
Some architects specify materials, some don't. I personally, and I would say this with all my architect friends sitting in the room, I wish they would do a little bit better job in specification because material selection is a really important part of how we contribute to greenhouse gases. The built environment is the biggest single contributor, and when you think about that number being around 40% of contribution to GHGs, 11% of that is material selection. And so I think it is a little bit naive to just play out of that same old playbook and say, I'll just go with the low-grade material again, whatever it might be, not just insulation. And luckily, it's a very slow-moving space, but it is evolving.
Yes.
And a lot of that is because demand is changing. And so you've got a clientele now that's saying, wait a minute, how toxic is this stuff? And do I really want it in my air? And the answer is increasingly no. So
Yes.
I think the misconception is that it's hard to use alternative materials, but even beyond that, I think people are just, stretched to say they're lazy because they're not, but I think they're scared of change.
Yep.
And fortunately for us and other groups like ours, there is a rapidly increasing group that is saying, wait a minute, I'm going to apply some common sense here. And, sometimes things might just be too cheap to be any good. And insulation is a space where it deserves a second look.
Yeah. Yeah, I recently interviewed a company who was creating ceramic cement, and the same thing. People just cheap, they go to Portland cement.
Right.
When, it's a 50-year cycle. It doesn't last very long. That's why we see our bridges being replaced and repaired, where ceramic, has lasted thousands and thousands of years. So, same concept, the he's a builder, and same thing, fighting, people going the cheap route.
That's
Perfect.
what it is. It's a race to the bottom,
Yeah.
and it's, everybody thinking that, the only way to compete is on price. And
Yeah.
consumers drive that too. It's not everyone's fault that everyone wants the best price. And something that we learned early on is like insulation are 1.8% of construction costs. So if you pay a little bit more for insulation, what's the big deal, right? Well, it is a big
Yeah.
deal because everything that's better costs more.
Yeah.
So, for your listeners, one of the things that we're never in the conversation this early, but whenever we're given the chance, we sort of ask people to, really, look in the mirror in the design phase, because we see people, time and time again build, square footage or square meters that they don't need. And, if you can lop off, 500 or 1,000 square feet out of a house that is a whole bunch of space that you're not going to use,
Right.
then you can choose any material you want.
Yeah.
And so, again, we don't get to engage in that. That's a conversation we try to take on with architects quite a bit, though, because a lot of people want to impress their friends because they want to tell them how big their house is. Well, we need to shift that discussion to impress your friends by telling them how amazing materials are in it and how well built it is.
Yes, for sure. So, from a founder's perspective, what have been the biggest financial challenges in building Havelock Wool?
We thought it would be really easy to play in a big industry. The idea was kind of nobody will even know that we're here, and we'll just make our products and we'll, quietly sell it to the people that want to buy it. Well, we kind of missed the mark there because there's a requirement for so much education, and quote unquote competing, which I put in quotes because we're not really competing with fiberglass or cellulose or rock wool. I mean, those are huge, 100-year-old organizations. We're just a little guy with a better product, and so one of the things that has been hard is to realize that, whilst we thought we could participate under the radar, we need to be on the radar in order for people to specify us or choose to buy us, or put us on their shelves. And,
Right.
then when you start saying, wow, I'm up against, multi-billion-dollar organizations in their worst years, it's challenging. It's challenging.
Yeah.
So we just try to make sure that people understand our original message, which is not deviated. We are literally
Right.
not here to steal market share. We are here to offer a product to the people that want to buy it, and we're just lucky that there's enough of them out there that we can keep the lights on.
Perfect. Good. So how do you communicate ROI to customers beyond just upfront cost?
I mean, health and performance, really. Right?
Yeah.
On the one hand, you've got a high level of toxicity in other products. I don't know why. Probably helps make them cheap. But whether it's, fiberglass particulate or, chemical off-gassing in mineral wool or foam, like, all of these products have something wrong with it.
Yeah.
Versus taking a natural fiber that literally, as mentioned, has evolved as an insulator, doing as little as we can to manipulate it. We are literally just trying to get it into a form that you can easily put it in your wall cavity. That's sort of what we try to do as a business, and then with that comes all of these inherent and natural characteristics, which are managing moisture, again, 65% relative humidity. Those 5 follicles are actively desorbing and absorbing moisture in the ambient air and then putting it back in. Wool is a keratin like your fingernail, so it's protein-based, which means it doesn't spread to mold. It has a high nitrogen content, so it's naturally self-extinguishing. It's great at attenuating sound. I mean, there isn't anything a wool fiber doesn't do well, and that's what you get by the evolution across thousands of years. And so, there really is no competition. And what's really interesting is over the last 12 years, there's been a huge conformity in cost, such that, we are now available at Lowe's and Home Depot. You can go onto those websites and you can see real time, like, what is the cost difference between rock wool, which is the closest competitor, and Havalon.
Right.
And I don't know what it is because I haven't looked in a little while, but I'm pretty sure it's around 10%. And so if you look at the way, the complete and total lack of sustainability in the process for making if that's important to you, versus what we do, which is incredibly light touch and low power. We don't make our fibers, rainfall does. And so I just think that there's so many different ways to measure these things, but then ultimately for the consumer it comes down to cost. And when we're making that as close as it now is, I just think the decision's getting really easy.
Yeah, or at least it should be. Yeah. So what role do partnerships and distribution play in scaling a sustainability first company?
I mean, it's the best question so far, frankly. You can't be a small business in today's world. And we have really learned that the hard way. We have begged and pleaded with Federal Express. We have relationships through brokers and directly with shipping carriers. If you can't deliver a product in an economically feasible way, you can't survive. And that's what we've been trying to do for 12 years. If you look at our sales, we tend to sell on the East Coast and the West Coast of the U.S. We do sell through Canada. We have a distributor up there that we should recognize called Sage Restoration. And they've done a great job and been supportive of us. But the reality is we think we hope, but we think the big breakthrough for us from recent time is being able to create a relationship with organizations like Lowe's and Home Depot where we get to ship on their network.
Right, yes.
And that's all the difference in the world. right? Because
Yeah.
they are who they are. We all know who they are. And obviously, when they call a shipping carrier, they're going to get a much different reception than we are. And that means that we can now ship to the East Coast for the same price that we ship to the West Coast. And
Oh, excellent.
that is, as we've tried to communicate this to our followers, um, of course, we're happy to be in partnership with these guys. But really, what this boils down to is we get to attach the logistics network, which opens up the scope and the reach of where we can reasonably expect to sell our product.
Oh, beautiful. So, what has been the hardest part about trying to change an established industry?
I have an advisory board member who told me 12 years ago that this would take 10 years. And of course, I told him he was wrong because I thought it would take way less. And if we signed up with Lowe's and Home Depot in our 12th year, I was right that he was wrong, but it wasn't that it would take shorter than 10 years, it would be that it was longer. So I think that this is a slow-moving space. I think there are a lot of challenges from, a homeowner who's doing a renovation or new construction. They've never done it before, most of the time. Whenever they start, they've got the best architect on the planet, and they follow suit with the best builder on the planet. And you talk to them 6 or 8 months later when it's time to do insulation, or 12 months later, those relationships are fractured a little bit.
Right.
And it's just, you never know what direction it's going to come at you from. What we know when a consumer calls us, which is where we still generate most of our opportunities, we know what they're going to ask before they do.
Yeah.
They literally panic because they're building, they hear about insulation, they've never thought about it before, and they're like, oh my gosh, I don't want whatever this is in my house. Where's an alternative? And if we're marketing well, that's when they find us.
Right.
And so, I think that you just have to be ready. We didn't see that when we started. The traditional channels to market are builders, architects, and insulation installers. And for, 10 years, we didn't really get any kind of reception to them. So
Right.
I think you just have to be nimble and ideally have a great product, which we've always felt like we had. And we were talking to end users early on, and we knew the result was great. And so it just continues to be, again, why we're thankful for being here. This is about awareness and education and just letting know people that this option exists. And then for those that it's important to, they'll find a way to get our stuff. They do it every day. It's kind of fun to watch.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I'm glad they do.
Yeah.
So, where do you see the most resistance? Builders, regulators, or consumers?
Definitely not consumers. Consumers drive the ability for us to stay in business.
Oh, excellent.
I'd say the trade, right? And we define the trade as builders, installers, and architects. And I think they're all equally challenged to be change agents. Installers are really just going to do whatever they're told. They're not going to drive new materials. You can find some that get really enthusiastic about it. We know a guy in the Bay Area, just north of San Francisco. He won't work with fiberglass or cellulose or spray foam. He's like, these are low integrity products. I'm not going to install them.
Yeah.
And so, there are guys out there and like that, and there's more and more of them. But I just think, again, it's just down to, education. Of course, everything in business is luck and timing. But then, if you can stay around long enough and educate enough, maybe you can make your own luck.
Yeah. And the key, I guess, would be to try to find more of that type of builder.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is, not that I ever want to be in the business of defending distributors who, move garbage products all over the place, but, what do distributors do? They distribute. They don't really sell, right? They move goods.
Yeah.
So if a good doesn't sell itself, they don't really want it. And that's where we went back and created this groundswell at the consumer level to try to drive the interest, because we knew it was always there. And that's how we, got on board with Lowe's and Home Depot. They understood that there was a consumer out there that wanted to buy this product, and they wanted to offer it to them. And I think that we can take that and keep pushing it down the track into larger scale distribution, and in fact, we're having these conversations
Yeah, yeah. I've dealt with other industries. Companies are looking for a product that'll pull the customer in.
now. Yeah.
So, and not have to be nothing, but pushing the product and advertising it. They, like you said, if it's the consumer that's driving it, and that's why they brought it on board.
Yeah,
So how do?
I just had a consultant video sent to me on Instagram the other day, and it's a woman in Southern California, and she's pouring water on some of our insulation while she calls it the Ferrari of insulation.
Oh wow, nice.
Which of course, we feel like we've known and we're obviously quite proud of, but that's the groundswell that we're trying to create.
Yeah.
We want other people having experience with our product and being comfortable telling others what they think of it. It doesn't matter what I think. I'm biased, right? I started
Yeah.
this for a reason, because I'm excited about wool. But we don't have any tricks. We're just here offering an amazing product. But again, it doesn't really matter what we think. We need others to help us and get behind
Yeah.
the fact that, wow, this is an amazing fiber that can do wonderful things. The
Yeah.
way it performs is a given. We already know that. So now it's just about, can we get the biggest microphone possible
Yes.
to help people learn about this as an
Yeah.
opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. So how do building codes and regulations impact adoption of alternative materials?
I think building codes are fairly archaic, and I think that we have to be a little bit careful here, but I think that there's a heavy hand weighed on them in many instances from very large organizations.
Yeah.
That can tilt the scale and make it hard for new entrants into the market. And so I think that just, common sense and open eyes and an open mind into thinking about, in our case, buildings were being insulated before anybody even knew what a building code was. Right?
Yeah.
And so, do I think that these codes need to exist, and are they important to keep us sort of in a framework around building? 1,000%. We can't have people just go throw up any structure they feel like.
Yeah.
But I think that, the greatest example in insulation is we're sort of running away into creating these higher R values or U values, right? This measure of thermal conductivity. And, you can't just keep adding a number,
Yeah.
right? That's hard for insulation manufacturers that are trying to, one, create a product and two, sell one. And so, this is getting a little bit complex, but when you get into thermodynamics, there's a bell curve. And so you can keep raising thickness and density to achieve R values that you want, but at some stage, you'll get too dense, and now you haven't trapped enough air in that cavity, in that insulation medium, that it starts working against you. And so
Right.
to just say like, oh, we're going to go in the US from R19 to R20 to R22 to R23 to R24, like that doesn't work. Like at
Yeah.
some stage that number stops. And
Yes.
so now we have to think about how we build differently. And that probably starts getting us into a conversation around continuous exterior insulation. Now, go talk to builders about putting up continuous exterior insulation, and I guarantee you 9.9 out of 10 are going to say, I've never done that.
Right.
So I just think that, we need to make slow change here. We obviously need to build, responsibly towards climate change. But I also think that, a healthy dose of practicality to at least remain in the equation as we make these changes would serve everybody's interest quite well.
Perfect. So what keeps you pushing forward when progress feels slow?
Two things. One, I know how great our product is. And two, frankly, like a real fear for if we don't keep doing this, what are people going to buy?
Yeah. Yeah.
Cotton is not an insulator. That has no space in a wall cavity. people are trying to get excited about hemp, but it's not that much different than cotton. It's
No.
rapidly renewable, but it's not a great fiber. And so, I don't know. I mean, I ask myself, I drive an hour and a half every day, and I say to myself, like, oh, if we stop doing this, then what do people buy? And then you start to ask yourself, well, we got a warehouse full of material. Like, does anybody even care? So, we care. That keeps us driving. And also,
Yeah.
in all seriousness, a view that, as a small company, you can never have enough resources.
Yeah.
We don't want to do what Timber HP did in Maine and raise, $100 million and overspend it and flame out.
Yeah.
We don't, but we also don't want to, never have enough money to actually tell our story. So,
Yes.
We try to live in that pragmatic, deliberate space of just keep going and celebrate the little wins and let them drive you, because again, you've got this great high-performing product, and you can't change an industry, this old and this big quickly. It just doesn't happen. And
Yeah.
so, if 10 years turns into 15 years, so be it. We didn't get into this to make quick buck.
Yes.
And so I think that enjoyment and that refrigerator we have in the back of the office that's literally covered in handwritten letters of people saying, thanks for doing what you do. There's a lot of inspiration for us to find, even in the face of just constantly having somebody step on your throat because you're a little company and that's what they like to do.
Yeah. 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 All right. So where do you see AI fitting into the future of sustainable building materials?
Honestly, I don't know. We tried some customer service AI software in the last 6 months, and we ran it for about 5 months and turned it off. It's not complex what we do, seemingly, for those of us who know a little bit about it, but it actually is quite complex. And when somebody's making decisions, and let's face it, when we're talking about building, we're writing big checks. We've seen it firsthand. People don't want a response from a computer. If you're buying a golf shirt and you want to change the address to your order, maybe. And so that's on the customer service side of the business. Now, let's flip over. We went and visited a robotics factory a week ago. And can we start to employ some of that technology for our manufacturing process? Yes, we are looking at that. I wouldn't really say that's AI, but now we get into kind of the intelligence side of what this stuff allows us to do. And so can we start coding and remapping software on our own? Because coding is hard and requires a specific degree, but we've got some intelligent people around here that all of a sudden can use AI to code.
Yes.
And so, I don't know the answer. I have a curious mind. I read about this stuff all the time. I would say in our line of manufacturing and in our efforts to deliver our product, I think the AI changes are going to be subtle. Versus other industries where I think obviously there's a great opportunity for, some of this supreme intelligence and machine learning to give us some efficiency.
Gotcha. So, stating that, do you think AI can help with building performance, reduce material waste, or improve education for builders?
Certainly, education and understanding efficiency, right? Data collection, data capture, data processing. That stuff's wheelhouse for sure. So yes, get out of manufacturing, get out of customer service, and get into how do we learn, how do we get smarter, how do we understand efficiency, how do we build better, how do we educate, for sure. That's just not within my purview. And AI is still not going to run a crane when you're putting in a new wall system.
No.
But I do think in terms of measuring efficiency, maybe connecting grids, energy is already a big issue with us, particularly because AI is consuming so much of it. I think that, first of all, I'm not really smart enough to answer this question. And then secondarily, I think a lot of it, continues to be an unknown as we sit here today.
Right. Yes. Yeah. An unknown for a lot of companies like yourself.
Yeah.
So, do you think how might AI improve supply chain forecasting or demand planning for companies like yours?
I mean, again, I'm sure on a very basic level, I could feed a model, a bunch of numbers and have it do some predictive work for me. But, at least at this phase, at this stage, like how much, you know, geopolitical disturbance does it not appreciate? Does it not know about? I mean, the same amount as me, right? But like, I didn't see the tariffs coming, and that's a meaningful addition
Yeah.
to the business that we have to pay,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so, is AI going to predict the tariff? Is AI going to tell me when the tariff is
No.
going to turn off? No.
No.
And so I think we just live in a really scary, volatile world where, you can model this stuff already. I mean, I learned how to do that in business school. But, a model is only as good as the paper it's written on. Like,
Yeah.
I can't model my demand curve for 2026. I can guess, and I can capture data from all over the place.
Yeah.
And, to try to mitigate any risk in actual deviation from where things end up. And we can, pressure test it at various sensitivities. But, in the end, the only accurate crystal ball is the one that looks in the rearview mirror.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So last question here. So what excites you most about the intersection of technology and sustainability?
Probably education and awareness. People are really confused, unaware, if not misguided and lied to. And so, we started with ChatGPT, I'm 50 years old, right? So like, I'm a dinosaur as it relates to this stuff, but I'm pretty good at using Google and searching the internet. And then of course we get into ChatGPT and we learn how to search and ask and learn things. These days for me, I'm into Gemini and like, it's essentially the same thing, but this is a natural evolving story of like who's offering more and how they're doing it. But just in terms of getting yourself educated, asking questions of AI wherever you choose to do it. And I'm always late to this game, although I'm interested, so I'm in it. But I'm not sort of the first person to really understand the usage. But as even now, and I realize I'm continually way behind the curve. But just in terms of asking a question and like the more information you provide, of course, the better the answer.
Yeah.
And forget about how quick it is. Just the breadth of the information that you receive in asking questions about literally anything. So if we go piling in and we start asking about how to build sustainably, and the ability for us to learn that and not have it stuck with a few professionals that covet that information and either don't share it or require you to pay lots of money in order to extract that, which is not unfair because they spend a lot of time getting educated. So those are some barriers that are definitely going to break down. But the ability to learn and apply that to this space is really quite compelling. And I hope that people will do it starting yesterday. But certainly I think the more we talk about it, the more we can expect it to change.
Right. Perfect. Good. Well, Andrew, this has been a powerful conversation. You're not just selling insulation, you're challenging how we think about spaces we live in and work in. For anyone who's listening who wants to learn more, click on Havelock Wool online and explore what natural, high-performance insulation can do for healthier buildings. Andrew, thanks again for joining me. It's been very not entertaining, very educational, and I learned a lot from that. So everybody, yeah, perfect. So thanks for tuning into the Business Exchange. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe and share it with someone in construction or real estate. and we'll see you next time.